Well, Craig, the site that triggered the backlash, WikiLeaks, has now vanished from Twitter. Obviously, whoever's behind it got a little nervous and shut it down. But before that happened, somebody else mirrored the content of the site. So let me show you on the tablet what some of the last posts from whomever is behind WikiLeaks were. Here's one of them says, "I set up this project to make a point, not ensnare innocent people in a government witch hunt." And then the final post at the top in blue, "You are showing the government that the people have the real power. Farewell." So joining us now are three experts in the social media arena. Joining us are Alfred Hermida. He's one of the leading academics investigating the changing media landscape at University of British Columbia. He's also one of the founding editors of the BBC's website. Lindsey Pinto is a member of OpenMedia.ca, which has led the charge for protecting the openness and accessibility of the internet. And joining us here in studio, our regular contributor Colin Horgan, who covers the Hill for internet site iPolitics.ca. So, folks, we saw something I think brand new here in Canadian politics, the full force of a social media protest. So, Colin, why do you think, the reaction so forceful?
Well, first of all, the bill wasn't a very good one, so that didn't help. But also, I think most of the time, there's a perception that people don't read user agreements online, the things you get at Facebook or at Google when you sign up, but people do. And this is basically what C30 was. It was a new user agreement, and there's a sort of subset of people who really read these things and let everybody else know what's going on. And that usually becomes sort of a viral thing, and eventually a couple of days go by and everyone knows about it, and suddenly there's a backlash. I think that was one reason. I think also the Conservatives made a mistake in the way that they sold this bill. They went to the Canadian public with the same language they used when they were selling their omnibus crime bill, and they weren't talking to the same audience. And so they sort of went with this kind of, things are happening, you need us to protect you. And everyone went, no, we're in charge of the internet. We want to keep it the way it is, and we're gonna handle it.
Yeah, and as you say, people who are on the internet are used to, Facebook and Google changing the privacy rules without necessarily telling them, so they're always kind of alert.
Right.
So, Lindsey, Vic Toews said he was surprised by the force of the backlash here. Should he have been surprised, and were you surprised?
Absolutely not. I mean, as Colin said, these bills are completely terrible. They create a warrantless data registry of Canadians' personal information. And frankly, Canadians over the last few years have become increasingly engaged in issues that shape the internet, which has been a primary medium for communication and for education and for cultural sharing. And Canadians have come together to use a variety of creative ways to make sure that the word is being spread and that people of all creeds and levels of education and levels of interest have some idea of what's going on with these bills. And because they're so terrible, they have engaged a huge number of Canadians.
Is some of this, though, a generational divide as well, Lindsey, in that, people my age are sometimes surprised when these things flare up because they don't really truly understand the nature of online?
Maybe. I mean, the internet has changed quite a bit, and it's always changing very rapidly. But I mean, I'm seeing people of all ages and all kinds of different kinds of people who are taking to social media, people who are using things like the hashtag #TellVicEverything to basically tweet various random details of their personal lives, and that's been pulling in people who are curious as to what's going on. And we also see levels of engagement that involve privacy lawyers blogging about it and people spreading the words in more and more conventional ways. This has caught the eye of the mainstream media, as you know.
Yes.
And it's basically.
That would be awesome. So, Alfred, let me go to you on something, because I think what was a little bit different about this kind of political attack is that it was anonymous. The person behind it wasn't identified, unlike in traditional journalism where you put your name on a column and you're held accountable to it. So in social media and in what passes for journalism on social media, are there different ethical standards? Are there any ethical standards?
I think what we're seeing here is evolving ethical standards. Certainly when it came to discussing the private information of Vic Toews, there was an understanding between the media and the politicians that we would not discuss his divorce. Yet all this information was public record. And you could make a case that if a minister is talking about the importance and sanctity of marriage, then his personal life might have some relevance to his public comments. What WikiLeaks did then is take that sort of disconnect between the public comments and his private life, take publicly available information and put it out there. In a sense, give Vic Taves a taste of his own medicine if the legislation had gone through as originally planned, giving pretty much the government carte blanche to dig into our private lives.
Well, is there any way, though, that a politician, Alfred, can defend themselves against that kind of anonymous attack?
Well, I think anonymous attacks are not a new thing for social media. We've had these in politics since politics began. Certainly, journalists sometimes use anonymous sources, and they can be remarkably powerful. If we think back to Watergate, that was an anonymous source. So anonymous sources do have a role to play in flows of information, and sometimes anonymity is an important guarantee for that information to come out in the first place.
Okay, I want to turn to this notion of an investigation then, Colin, because as you know, the Speaker is investigating, trying to get to the bottom of who WikiLeaks is or was, I guess, because it's vanished now. To your mind, has any law been broken here?
I don't think so. No, it doesn't look like that. They're using the information that whoever it was put out there. They were careful about it. They used information that was already in the public domain, and they also used information available to everybody through the proactive disclosure. Even parts of the websites that are available here on the Hill or at firm departments. So no, they didn't do anything illegal in my mind, and I also don't know what the Speaker is going to do exactly to look. It's going to get very complicated.
Because there are some like 4,000 people who might have had access to that IP address.
Right. Well, this is the thing. Like these IP addresses that they're talking about, there's only a few of them for the Hill. But what I mean by the Hill is that there are a number of buildings around Ottawa that use these IP addresses. So in order to be able to find exactly who it was, the other thing is all we know is that this person had access to the account, the Gmail account or the Hushmail account for the Twitter account. It doesn't actually mean that that's the same person who did it. So who is this person, and does it even really matter that we know?
So, Alfred, let me go back to you on that issue then. I mean, if the Speaker is able to get to the bottom of this, he's going to have to look at web logs, which is going to require, I guess, under the current law, some sort of warrant to be able to do that. Is a precedent being set here that if something is posted which is factually correct, which is based on a document, and a politician doesn't like it or is embarrassed by it, that there could be some sort of internet witch hunt against the journalist?
Well, I think this goes to part of the tensions we have with social media, in that this is a platform open to everybody, where we can all become our own media outlet. And the information being posted here was all publicly available. So it's not so much that they were leaking secrets, but rather using what social media is very good at, which is connecting to people, amplifying a message, and spreading that information through the network. Because if I put out something on Twitter, it goes to my group of followers. If they retweet it, it goes to their group of followers. And suddenly it starts to snowball. Then the mainstream media takes an interest, and we start talking about it on a Sunday morning. But all this information was publicly available, so it's hard to see how you could mount any kind of legal reason for trying to identify who was behind it.
Well, Lindsey, any civil society, I guess, is a pact between a government and its people about where there should be limits on people's freedoms, where that makes sense. For civil libertarians on the internet, are there any instances, maybe child pornography is one of them, where their civil liberties should have limits around them?
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is always a case of balancing law enforcement against the civil liberties, as you said. But in this particular case, with this bill doesn't target criminals. It doesn't target child pornographers. It targets the personal information of any Canadian at any time. And it doesn't use warrants. It doesn't use court oversight. And what's more is that there's never been any kind of need for these bills shown. The police have yet to come up, and the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police actually sent out an email to officers asking for some kind of for evidence and cases where a warrant impeded an online investigation, and they haven't found one. And they've been looking for a long, long time. They've been looking since the last time these bills were tabled, and frankly, there's no real need for this expansion of surveillance powers. It's a solution in search of a problem.
All right.
In the case of WikiLeaks as well, I mean, I just want to quickly add that we see Vic Taves' personal information coming out, yes, but we realize from that privacy isn't just about having nothing criminal to hide, it's about our fundamental freedom. So hopefully this is going to serve to teach the Public Safety Minister a bit of a lesson on that.